Hi everyone. This week I want to take a step back and look at the big picture of what happens when your child transitions from school-based services into the adult service system. Specifically, I'll be talking about applying for adult eligibility through DDS, what the Individual Transition Plan or ITP actually is, and one of the most significant shifts families experience, moving from an entitlement system to an eligibility system. As a reminder, we live in Massachusetts, so I'll be speaking from that lens. The overall concepts apply across states, but the details may look a little different where you live. And just a quick disclaimer before we dive in. I am not a lawyer. Everything I'm sharing today is meant to be informational and a starting point from a parent perspective. Always follow up with your advocate, attorney, or team members for guidance specific to your situation. So, let's get started. If you've listened to earlier episodes or read previous blog posts, you know the major to-do items once your child is at least 2 years away from aging out of school is applying for adult services. This was something that surprised us. Even though Elle was found eligible for DDS services as a minor, he had to apply again for adult eligibility. Before you can make any decisions about adult programming, self-direction, or supports, you first need to know which adult agency your child is actually eligible for. In Massachusetts, this process starts with what's called the 688 referral. The 688 referral is initiated by the school district at least 2 years before your student is expected to leave the public school system and end special education services. This referral is documented in the IEP within the transition planning form and is sent to the adult agency the team believes may be appropriate. In Massachusetts, those agencies typically include the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, now going by the name of Massability, or the Department of Mental Health, DMH. This step is critical because it starts the adult service process. And this is important to hear clearly. A 688 referral is not an approval. It is simply a referral to an agency. Once the referral is made, the agency should contact you with next steps. If you don't receive anything in a reasonable amount of time, it's appropriate to follow up directly with the agency. For us, Elle's referral went to DDS, so I'll focus on that process. After DDS received the school's referral, we got a letter confirming that DDS agreed it was the appropriate agency for transition planning. Shortly after that, we received a second letter from the regional eligibility team. And this letter included the application for DDS eligibility and a list of documentation required to complete the application. At the time, Elle was in the middle of his 3-year testing cycle, so we contacted the DDS coordinator listed on the letter and requested an extension so we could submit the most current information. One piece of advice here, and really for the entire transition process, is this: document everything in writing. Emails, dates, names, summaries of phone calls. When you're juggling a lot at this stage, having things in writing makes a huge difference. So, once DDS receives and reviews the application packet, they'll contact you to schedule an interview with your adult child. Our interview took place pre-COVID and was in person. I was able to stay with Elle during the meeting. DDS reviewed his records and asked structured questions via the MASCAP, the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment Profile. Within the MASCAP, they will ask questions via the ICAP, Inventory of Client and Agency Planning tool. This asks questions about the person's needs, level of independence, daily living skills, and future plans. It was a formal process and the responses were recorded. After the interview and review process is completed, DDS will then send a written eligibility determination letter. DDS eligibility generally falls into categories such as intellectual disability services or community development disability supports, which may include autism spectrum disorder and certain genetic conditions. The eligibility category matters because that determines which funding stream applies to your child. If your child is found eligible, the next step is being assigned a DDS transition coordinator. That coordinator should attend IEP meetings no later than 1 year before your child ages out of school. In our case, we were able to have a coordinator attend earlier, which helped everyone plan more efficiently. If your child is not found eligible, you do have the right to appeal. The determination letter outlines how to do this. When we went through the process, appeals had to be submitted in writing within 30 days of receiving the letter. I would say from start to finish, our DDS eligibility process took about 10 months. And this is why that 2-year timeline for the 688 referral is so important. That early referral helps adult agencies anticipate future needs and budget accordingly. Because DDS knew L was coming and when he would exit school, he was included for future budget planning. Also, because we did this 2 years before he aged out, we were able to have our DDS transition coordinator attend 2 IEP meetings instead of 1. Once eligibility is established, the next major document families hear about is the Individual Transition Plan, or ITP. The ITP outlines the types of adult supports the student and family are requesting after leaving special education. It is typically developed about 1 year before exit and is arranged and chaired by the adult agency, so in our case, it was DDS. The meeting usually includes the student, family members or guardians, school personnel, adult agency representatives, and anyone else the family feels should be involved. The ITP is not a list of goals or a placement decision. Think of it as a blueprint. It reflects the individual's interests, skills, and support needs. And this is a key point. The ITP does not guarantee services. Supports listed in the ITP are subject to prioritization, funding, and availability. The DDS Transition Coordinator writes the ITP, and then it is reviewed by the DDS Central Office. Then it is sent to the individual or guardian for approval. So for us, while we were initially looking at CBDS programs, the final ITP submitted by the DDS Transition Coordinator indicated that L would be doing the participant-directed program model of self-direction. One of the biggest adjustments families experience during this transition is a shift from entitlement services to eligibility services. Under special education law, students ages 3 to 22 are entitled to services under IDEA, including a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. Once a student ages out or graduates, those entitlement protections end. Adult services operate differently. First, your adult child must be found eligible. Second, and this is often the hardest part, even if found eligible, services are not guaranteed. In our case, L was eligible for DDS services, and he was eligible for a community-based day support program. However, there were no openings in programs in our area. DDS was not required to find or create a placement, and providers were not obligated to accept him. In Massachusetts, DDS is also not required to secure placements if programs are full, and year-to-year budget changes can impact services. Adult providers can also determine that someone is not a good fit for their program. That really is what initially led us to explore self-directed services as an alternative way to build a program using available funding. We knew that even though L was eligible, his services were not guaranteed. So what's your call to action? If your child is 2 or more years away from aging out, here are your next steps. 1. Confirm that the 688 referral has been completed. 2. Make sure the referral is documented in the IEP. 3. Know which adult agencies the referral was sent to. And 4. Track timelines and keep documentation of all communication. Understanding this process ahead of time won't remove all uncertainty, but it will help you plan, advocate, and make informed decisions as your child enters the adult service world. Until next time, thanks for listening. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Life Without a Filter. If you found this helpful, please consider sharing it with another family who might be on the same journey. And I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, leave a comment, or connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And as always, if you want more resources on transition planning, assistive technology, or self-direction, you can find everything on my website. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you're doing an incredible job.